You see this? This is a coin issued by Alexander the Great. It's a Greek drachma. When this coin was issued, that was the greatest empire the world had ever seen up until that point. But it didn't take long, literally a few years after Alexander the Great died. Nobody thought that the Macedonians, the Greek Empire, the Hellenist Empire would ever be defeated and conquered. But it took a few years after Alexander the Great died before this currency wasn't what it was. It was just chipped away at. And that's one of the things that really concerns me. I keep this on my desk to remind myself how quickly empires can collapse and things in history can change. Great Britain was a world empire up until literally post-World War II, when the United States supplanted it. And I always think to myself how important it is for us to remember that what we have now, the United States as the most powerful country in the world, isn't destined to last. If history has taught us anything, it's taught us that empires come and go all the time. And England was a world empire literally post-Napoleon. So basically they had the crown for 125 years, 100 years. France had it for Napoleonic France, even before that. The Mongols had it for a while. The Turks had it for a while. Alexander the Great had it for a while. Empires, being dominant countries, that doesn't last forever. There's always somebody coming for you. And I've been looking at this a lot lately, thinking a lot about what China's been doing to the US dollar. What they've been doing basically is really going after our currency, trying to supplant us as the #1 currency in the world. And what's so dangerous about that, if we are no longer the world's reserve currency, what's so dangerous about that is, you remember the Great Recession in 2009, the Fed saved the economy. So during the COVID crash, when we basically shut down the country, the Fed saved the economy. If we didn't have the world reserve currency, the Fed would not be able to save the patient next time there was a big crash. Can you imagine that? The Fed wouldn't be able to save the economy. The Fed wouldn't be able to take the United States, if it's having a cardiac arrest like it did during the Great Recession, and revive that patient. It would take, instead of reviving the patient in a year, it would take 5, 10 years. You really open the door to Great Depressions without having the US as the dominant reserve currency. And right now, that is being chipped away at by China. This is something that really concerns me a lot. This is why I'm always talking about it, because we take it for granted how lucky we are that we are able to print money. And the Fed, basically, we take for granted when something catastrophic, when there's a massive recession, that the Fed can really work to save the economy by printing dollars or easing monetary policy. We take that for granted as a given in this country. But if we lived in a world where that wasn't the case, things could get very bad very quickly. I'm reminded of Weimar Republic, Germany, after World War I. The currency got so bad over there that different towns started to issue their own currency. Different towns started to issue their own currency. Then, of course, people started to steal copper from roofs and all this other stuff. They would make sure that their bosses paid them in the morning because the inflation rates were printed every day. So they wanted to know if it took 100 Deutsche Marks to buy a loaf of bread, they wanted to be paid that morning so they could rush to the grocery store, because the very next day, it could take 500 Deutsche Marks to buy the same loaf of bread, or 1,000 or 10,000. By the end of the great inflation, you'd have to fill a shopping cart with Deutsche Marks to buy one loaf of bread. Can you imagine having to fill a shopping cart full of dollars to buy a loaf of bread for your kids or for yourself? Can you imagine that? It's situations like that, economic destruction, that literally create political instability. It was Hitler saying, "You hate this life. Look how bad things are. I will make them better." When you have economic destruction like that, when you have 25, 30% unemployment, you create fertile ground to rise up for dictators, literally populist dictators. That's just the nature of history. That's one thing history teaches us. The worse the economy is, the higher the unemployment, the higher the inflation, the more likely it is you've created fertile soil for Joseph Stalin, Adolf Hitler, Pol Pot, other really bad dictators to rise up and take control of their population. This is actually why it is so important for us to remain financially disciplined as a country, to lower our debt, not to use runaway inflation, not to keep printing money, et cetera, et cetera. Anyway, that's enough out of me today. This is Dylan Jovine with Behind the Markets.